Good morning, David. Thank you. Good morning, David. Hello, David. Hello, Nikai. Hello. Sorry, hello, Zitlali. Please correct me. Hello, Darina. Good morning. Thank you. It's terrible that I keep saying the name. Good morning, Alyssa. Good morning, Molly. Good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Nikaya. I'm going to try this again because I'm doing I really should. Is it Sitlali? Do I say that right? Could I be corrected on that, please? Because I know I keep Sitlali.
Hi. Yes, you said it right.
Oh wait, I can't hear you guys. I'm sorry. Wait, my thing is. Hold on a second. You're probably talking, and I'm not hearing anybody. Hang on a second. I'm sorry, everybody.
The ground below us.
Whoa. Okay.
As
Hang on. Hang on. Sorry.
Let alone, by the way.
Whoa, craziness is happening.
It's going like 60.
Okay. Hold on. And good morning, Molly. Hold on. Sorry. Disaster. Wait, or not disaster, but okay. So I'm sorry. Could anybody just say hello vocally so I could see if I'm even hearing you?
Can you hear me?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Okay. Thank you. So now, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I know I'm going to just keep blocking on this until I get it right. So, so Ms. Maceda, could you say your name right for me, please?
Hi. Yeah, you said it right the first time.
Oh, okay. And do you, okay. Thank you. So Sitlali, that basically is right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'm speaking as someone named Yaverbaum, so like it doesn't get weird than that. Okay, so good morning to you. Good morning to Catherine. Good morning to Jean-Pierre. Good morning, Catherine. Or I just said that. Sorry. Good morning, Amarani. And I'm not saying that right either. I'm sorry. Could you correct me, Amarani?
Amarani.
Amarani. Oh, that okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. Okay. So good morning, Amarani. Good morning, Asia. Good morning. I know this is, and good morning, Sonia. Good morning, Daniel. Good morning. I think that's, good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Molly. I think, oh, good morning, Alyssa. Okay. Oh, good morning, Noelia. I think that's everybody. I know it's weird that I do this. Oh, wait. Oh, there's tons. Wait a minute. Sorry. Oh, Darina. Good morning. And okay, maybe that is everybody. Okay. Weird. Okay, and I think we are recording. Right. Okay. Oh, and right. Quick bookkeeping things. Still, I continue to think, and you probably think that I just always say this, but I don't. I think you guys are very, very on top of things. I got a lot of homework 4s from people, which is great, and got it back, and they did well. But again, if you still haven't done homework 4, it's totally I don't remember the exact due date, but I think we should be up to doing homework 4 now, even though we still might be not talking about it yet in class. So I did, so nobody's, some of you, I think there are some of you that still need to do homework 1 or 2, and you do want to do that. If you haven't done homework 1 or 2 like that, I'm still not technically calling it late or anything, and the portal's open, but you do want to maybe do that. But and it's okay to use your class notes and stuff, but as far as homework 4, if you did do it and did well, then that's great, and we're both happy about that. If you haven't done homework 4, there's no harm, no foul at all yet. But we're about to get to it. It's not a problem if you haven't done it. You will get full credit. But I do also want to say, and it was a dilemma for me, but I did put homework 5 into the stream. Technically, at least as of this moment, homework 5 is due Monday. Now, let me say this to everybody again. I know I have kind of a maybe annoyingly confusing view of deadlines and stuff. The most important thing is to do things in order. So if you have not done homework 4, you are not in trouble. We haven't even started talking about it. It is totally okay if you have not done homework 4. Please do understand that you should try that before you do homework 5. And please do understand that we will not even talk about homework 5 until we talk about homework 4, and we haven't started talking about homework 4 yet. So I know that, and I want you to know that, in other words, there's no way I'm marking anybody late for homework 4 or something if we haven't even started talking about it yet. Again, people who have done it shouldn't feel like they did something stupid, because I know they did it, and that's good, and it's out of their way now, and they can move on. But nobody is late if they haven't done homework 4, and nobody should even think about homework 5 until they've done homework 4. So like, and I'm saying all this because I'm the kind of person that if I hadn't done homework for it and then suddenly Yaverbaum put homework 5 in the thing, it would cause me stress. I would start feeling like more behind, or like there was something unfair going on or something. I just want to tell you, I'm only putting homework 5 in there so that I don't forget, basically, and so that I can keep things going, and so that people who have done homework 4 don't like get bored or something. But please, it's always about just doing the next thing wherever you are. And, we used to have all the homeworks posted in advance on the web, like all of them to the end of the semester, which some people loved, but that really drove some people crazy because it was like too overwhelming. So, okay, so just, I hope that's okay. So just do whatever next homework you're on. Nobody's in trouble yet for being late or anything like that. Same thing with the game though assignments. I think I think I'm caught up with wherever you guys are. Just please understand that technically every single class, you have the opportunity or the responsibility, if you like, to spend 10 minutes right after class, just reminding me of any way you contributed that day, including saying hello. And just to be clear, and you can retro those, or if it's too confusing, you can just start doing that today. But every time you do it, you get 50 points. Just know, and it really, it could just be writing down. I didn't do much. I mostly just took notes today, but I said hello. Oh, but I should also tell you all, I'm sorry. And I may put in another portal for this. Really, honestly, especially if you're like a lot of people are very intensely engaged, but they're quieter than others, right? And which is totally fine. This thing is not supposed to be embarrassing. It's supposed to be helpful, the game assignments. So honestly, if you're like a little bit nervous about this whole class participation thing or about your grade in the class or something, but if you're here in class and stuff, if nothing else, and again, I'll open up a separate portal for this, but you can take a little screenshot of notes that you took on your own like notebook, and you can send me a screenshot of just a little bit of notes that you took, not because I'm doubting whether you're taking notes, but just to show like that's the way you're engaging, is you're taking note. Like that can work for me, for what it's worth. Anyway, so hopefully the whole homework scene is clear to people. It seems like it is. It seems like you guys are very on top of it. I want to continue. What am I forgetting? Am I forgetting anything?
Professor, I have a question.
Yes, yeah, please. Yeah.
So for today, would it be game turn 7? Because I'm a little like confused with what's like
right
for today, because I was a little like backed up because I forgot what I would say in the chat sometimes, so I didn't like fill it out.
Right. I think I totally understand. Yeah, and it does get right. It's hard to sort of remember from 3 weeks ago or something. And so right. Fair question. And in the middle, I changed the numbering system so it got confusing. But here's how it stands now. Like I'll even look. But yeah, turn 7, which I think is the most recent one that I just posted. Technically, that most recent one, turn 7. Technically, that would be due at what do we say? At 12. No, at 1 p.m. today. So technically turn 7, the most recent one, is the one where, so technically they're always due like an hour or whatever right after class. So the idea is turn 7 today, like while we're like right now, I'm sorry, actually, who asked that actually?
I did, Asya.
Oh, Asya, I'm sorry. Oh, and Asya, and I've been saying your name wrong. I'm sorry. Okay, so Asya, perfect example. Perfect question. Like, technically, turn 7 would be due today. Technically, at 1
p.m.
Right. So what I'm saying is, even like right now, even when we're done with this conversation, you can just take a minute before you forget to write in turn 7 that you just asked me this question, because this totally counts. So good morning, Yasmin. You can put that in. So turn 7 is like due a half hour after class today, because of just that. You might forget what you did last week. So like right after class today, or even right during class, you can just submit turn 7. And once you've done that, and then in the next class would be turn 8, would be due right after class. So technically they're always due like a half hour after class, for that reason, that it's easy to forget otherwise. But I'm also saying now, like, if you just remember this and you write this down for turn 7 for today, you can then take a moment and scratch your brain. And if you honestly believe that last week, like, you didn't say much, but you said hello, this is not a court of law, like, and I know you well enough, like, you could take a moment to put in a thing from last week and just say, I didn't say much, but I said hello. And that's fine. And none of you has to, like, even if you're just understanding this now, I'm not asking any of you to stress out and try to retroactively put a million things in all the past portals. You totally can, and I wouldn't mark them late. But I'm basically saying once you get the hang of this, just, yeah, it's just a daily, it's just a weekly ritual. So even if you just picked up right now where we are on turn 7 today and just entered, asked this question, and then gotten that habit from the future, it would still be tons and tons of points that would help you, and we'd be on top. And again, for all of you, and I don't, because this is a good question, like, say you're just beginning to understand this now, and this is why I am trying to talk about, I mean, it's a weird system. So say it's just starting to sink in, or you've just gotten back a couple from me, so now you see how easy it is, because it is meant to be easy. If you've gotten back 1 or 2 from me and now you see, oh, that's how it works, don't freak out, any of you, that you never did turn 3 or turn 4. Like, you're never getting a 0 for any of these things. No, they're all like extra credit in principle. So don't worry about any past ones that you didn't do. Just if you feel like doing them and you can remember something honest, then do them, because you'll just get that many more points. But just for anybody and everybody, once you get this system, just pick up at it with me and keep going. And I'll just add to that with this question, with Ajia's question. Also note that the question that Ajia just asked me, which was a very legitimate question, whether it's about the class or it's about physics, like, it's a legitimate question. She actually used her voice to ask that. So what that really means, again, not to bore anybody, but just to try to make this clear, since she not only said something this class, I mean, since not only did Ajia like have any comment at all today, but it happens that she actually used her voice as opposed to putting it in the chat or the private chat. Now, those are not bad to do that, but it's extra good from my point of view that she used her voice. Therefore, if I have it, just to make this as clear as I can, I'm saying that Ajia at the end of today, or even right now, like while I'm talking, like, I won't be insulted if right now she puts this in, she puts in a reminder of her question into the turn 7 50 points portal, but she can also literally use the exact same like note or screenshot reminder or whatever. She can submit a reminder of this exact same question that she just asked. She can also, and should also, submit it into the 75 point portal that's called like Speak Now or Forever Hold Your Voice or something like that. There's one portal that specifically gives you extra points if you happen to use your voice. And this just applies to everybody, of course. I'm not like trying to make a special case out of one person. But I'm saying I'm absolutely trying to be as clear as possible that you should double dip, so to speak. I want Ajia to understand that she should be doubly rewarded. She's rewarded just for the fact that she like had the guts to contribute anything to the class. And she should be rewarded for the fact that she had the guts to actually use her voice to do that, because I honestly think it's harder and more helpful for everybody to hear more voices besides just mine. And it is hard because I'm using my voice all the time and it's like awkward for me. So
Professor.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So shouldn't there be like 100-point portal for those who sit on their cameras? I'm just, not begging for points or anything.
That's a great question. Wait, I don't even know if that was a serious or joke, but yes, I haven't done it yet, but I'm definitely going to open. And yeah, no, I'm very glad you just said that. If this is starting to be more clear to people, if everybody gets that every day is just a typical 50 points, like everybody should be able to get a free 50, well, not free, but everybody should every single class day have an opportunity to grab themselves 50 points, even just by literally saying hello. And I want to say that again to everybody, because they're not BS points, they're real. But I'll also say to everybody, and they're really easy to get by just like recording that you said hello. But just notice that every single time that one of you does it, but if somebody else doesn't, then you are getting a lot more points than them. So like it can add up to making a difference between people if you do it. But now, so that's every day just for doing anything 50 points. Now, yes, I have these other special portals, which are all in theory due at the end because you can use them at any time. And by the way, you can use them more than once. But like special portals for special things like 75 points for your voice or 75 points for an image, what Nikaya is saying, and I totally agree, is that there should be a high point portal for anybody who ever uses their video. I absolutely agree. And I haven't put that, and I don't know, maybe I will make it 100 point. I think there's a reason I'm not making anything 100 except for one. I'll explain that in a second. But definitely at least 75. I fully agree that I should, and I might in a minute while we're doing something, I will open up a portal that will be due at the end, that you can use anytime, you know, it's like due at the end of the semester, and it'll be worth at least 75 points, and it will be for anybody who uses a video. And that's a great suggestion. That does mean that anytime any one of you even once puts your video on for 10 minutes, as long as you like remind me of that once I open the portal, and yeah, you'll get 75 points for that. And like, if we get more in a groove of this, if you do it twice, you can get 75 points. I mean, and I think that's great. And also what I think is great is that actually Nikaya just did what I've sort of been hoping or asking or trying to make available. I'm very open to you guys reminding me or telling me of different ways that you would want to get points, so to speak. Like, I'm totally up for any method that occurs to any one of you as a method of contribution. I think they should, so it's not that one should be rewarded more than others. It's like that they should also be rewarded. So yeah, no, so what Nikai is saying, totally, I don't have the portal yet, so I haven't explicitly given anybody points yet for video, but I absolutely will. I think that makes sense. And I think she was serious. I mean, but when she said 100 points, whether that was like hopeful or joke, the only reason I kind of have right now reserved the 100-point thing for the one portal, just to also explain. The one portal that's sitting there that's called Your Best, that's for 100 points, because I do want to distinguish that one. You know, you could put things in and take them out. You should update that whenever you feel like it. You might not feel like you can put anything in there yet, but just for the record again, but I'll keep talking about it. That portal that says Your Best, you don't need to put in anything at any time. But I would strongly encourage everybody, as we get closer to an exam or another exam or final grades, definitely put something in there. Because remember, that's where you want me that's how you want me to remember you, so to speak. And I've now had the experience in one other class where I can tell you, this sounds maybe not believable, but I can tell you, especially if you're worried about your grade at any point or something, or you feel like you're behind or blah, blah, even putting aside exams, like, or especially if you think you're going to do badly on the midterm exam, which we're not going to talk about today. It's not just yet, but say you think you're going to do bad on the midterm exam or the final exam. I promise you that if you take a full day class, if you take notes for a full day of class and you take good notes or careful notes and they make sense to you and they're organized, if nothing else, any one of you just like, scan your notes for the day for a good day when you were like really alive and attentive. Even if you said nothing, even if you figured out nothing and you're just like trying to absorb what I'm trying to do. But if you submit a copy of your class notes to that portal that says Your Best, please understand that the minute you do something better, like the minute you do take an exam that you're even more proud of or whatever, you can just take that out and put the new thing in. Like, you're not committing yourself to the rest of your life, but you're kind of saying, this is like some good work of mine so far. Like, this is a glimpse of what it looks like to be me on my side trying to do this physics. Like, this is what you couldn't see, Yaverbaum, just in your Zoom world. And if you give me, I've now seen this, if any one of you is feeling at all nervous, I mean, you don't have to be feeling nervous, you could be feeling anything. But if you submit some excerpts of your own class notes to me, especially until you have some bigger whopping exam grade or something, I will find that very, very helpful and very good. And and I'll respond to it. And then you can take that out later when you have something better later on. But so that portal, the portal that's called Your Best, I'm specifically making that 100 points because I kind of want to emphasize to everybody, that's the portal that you can use really when you start getting nervous about like how much your exam scores may count in this class or something like that. And maybe you won't, which would be great. But so I might not put the video as 100 points, long story short, but definitely, yes, I'm going to put a portal in for the video. That's a great point. Okay, I'm sure I spent way too long on that. But but it's on, I'm just going to chat, but we will get back to train of thought and the work and saying, oh, and good morning. Yes, sorry. And good morning, Yasmin, and good morning, Luna. Awesome. Okay. So I want to get back to train of thought, but I'm certainly happy. Any other logistical things or grading things, or I will say, if you think at this point, if you think you've turned anything into me in this class, or like, wait, anything you've turned into me, I think, and this is weird, but I think I've graded and turned back. Unless you like literally turned it into me in the last, right before this class today. So any of you who has turned in things, hopefully got them back. And if you do think that you've turned in a bunch of stuff and you haven't gotten it back, you may want to private chat me because that may mean I'm confused somewhere. But okay. So I'm going to pause. So I think what we're about to turn back to is the train of thought. But I'm going to pause for a second to make sure. Oh. Wait. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we're okay. I've just one of the, I think I said this yesterday, but just again, if I ever put in the homework WDD, that mean, sorry, if I ever put in the homework WWD, it means we will discuss. So it's not a criticism or anything, it just says there's more to say about this for sure, but I'm not going to get into it right here on your sheet. And if I say BCF, that means be careful, which is just that. And again, I encourage everybody, please like keep circling their answers like they are. If you are typing out your homework, like if you are typing out your homework, I do ask you, this may be a discussion for another time, but spread things out. Like if you do a bunch of work and you're typing it out, it's great, but kind of try to get in the habit. If you ever look in math and science journals, and we should talk about this at some point, but if you're really trying to do like math and science, like in the world or like publications, the way they do all that mathy stuff in journals and stuff is every single equation is separated by itself on its own line centered. It does make things like go a lot longer, but it makes it much easier to read, if that makes any sense. So try to please do that if you're typing out your homework. Like don't turn everything into paragraph forms, or at least skip lines. Skipping lines is good. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. All right, but okay, train of thought. We're going to turn to train of thought, but I'm going to intentionally just pause for a second to make sure you're all with me and that there's no questions. So I'm just going to pause for a second, but we are going back to train of thought. Okay. All right. So I want to, hopefully this is a very discussion oriented kind of topic. So again, and I love what you guys were saying. So I'm on train of thought here. We're talking about the sheet, and like largely today, we're going to talk about why we did it. Like as you all saw, so tons of you did the train of thought sheet, which is great. And you answered these questions. And as you could tell, the questions were not only not numerical, but for a lot of them, there isn't necessarily, I mean, I think you could tell there isn't necessarily one obviously right answer or something. There's something vague and open-ended about this assignment. So what's the point of it? What I want to talk mostly today about is just that, is what's the point of it? Oh, sorry. The assignment was definitely theoretical. I mean, it was definitely hypothetical. We were picturing something in our mind, but we were picturing something in our mind and picturing a situation where we might very well have a question that we'd want to answer in that scenario. And so in effect, I mean, so we're picturing something, excuse me. So there's something about train of thought that is an experiment. I mean, it is an investigation. It's an investigation into how would you determine whether you were actually moving or not if a lot of the evidence were suppressed, right? Like that's sort of the, I guess. Right? Like the train is fake. I know the train is fake. It's a hypothetical invention in our mind. In the hypothetical, like whether we're dreaming or we just found ourselves there, the question we're asking ourselves in that hypothetical is like, are we moving or not? Now, the purpose of this hypothetical is, of course, that I'm arguing that, well, first of all, this hypothetical represents something that does come up in reality or could come up in reality. And the question that we're asking in the hypothetical is, how do we determine, like we're asking, are we moving or not? So what we're really asking is, if this were a real experiment, or if this were reality, what actual experiment could I do, or how would I go about determining if I were actually moving or not, when all the evidence for motion seems to be suppressed or seems to be very non-evident, like bumps, lurches, things like that, right? So it's a thought. So the idea behind this Gedanken experiment. So the train of thought thing is it's fictional. It's mental, right? It's a thought experiment. In German, it's called a Gedanken experiment. Einstein, who was originally German, popularized this idea. And the reason it catches on in science, the idea of a thought experiment, is we still fundamentally, first and foremost, care about reality and anything that can actually be determined in an actual experiment. But sometimes running an experiment in your mind before you even run in reality is really useful, sometimes because you don't have the technology yet to actually make the experiment reality. But often, even if you do have the technology, as we do here, often running the experiment in your mind is a thing that reveals a surprising amount of truth. Like what's really funny is that we often, the laws of physics connect past, present, and future. So often and our job as physicists is to predict the future, but often there's this funny, so our first instinct is like, if we want to predict the future, we better run experiments in reality and see how the experiments work out. And then that's how reality will work out. But what's really strange is the better we get to know the laws of physics, often we can set up an experiment in our mind and then just let it run. And there's this weird way in which our mind knows the laws of physics. And if we let the experiment run in our imagination, we can see what we think will happen at the end in a way that we couldn't see if we didn't run the experiment in our mind. Like it's weird how actually there are movies that we can show ourselves that we don't know how they're going to end until we show it to ourselves. But then when we show the movie to ourselves, then we see how the movie ends. And it's bizarre that we can do that because like we're the same ones watching the movie as running the movie. So you'd think if we're running a movie to ourselves in order to find out what happens at the end, if we're the ones running the movie to ourselves, how come we have to run it at all? Don't we already know? But we don't, because the mind is not infinite. Like the mind has to, our brains have to go through certain steps to get to the end. They don't skip. So anyway, so the train of thought experiment is about, okay, we're going to do all this stuff with motion in the class, like analyzing velocity, acceleration, and all the math of that. But wait, let's just stop. Haven't we train of thought is asking us to first stop and acknowledge, wait, haven't we been in situations where motion is very ambiguous? Haven't we been in situations like on an elevator at John Jay or like like in the Empire State Building or something? Or haven't we been on a car on a highway? Or haven't we been in a very smooth airplane ride at times where literally at that moment, even if we think we know what's real, like, first of all, I think we've acknowledged, we've all been in, well, I believe I've been in moments where I've been legitimately, truly confused at least in that moment, like whether it's because I just woke up or it was a long time ago and it was a weekend and I had too much fun or something like that. But there have been moments when I wake up on the subway or wake up on an airplane or wake up in a car or come to attention in a car. And for one fleeting moment, I think the other car is moving when it's actually my car, or vice versa. Or I'm in an airplane and I don't know if we've landed yet or not, right? Like now, usually what we all do after we have this moment of, oh God, I thought that was moving, but it was actually me. Well, wait, can I first just ask? Oh, well, let me look in the chat. Hold on. I was just about to ask if anybody knew what I was talking about, but it looks like in the chat, maybe somebody does. Cool. All right. No, good. Thank you. And I'm glad Luna, you have no idea. I want to give Nikaya 100 points for even suggesting 100 points before. And I want to give Luna 100 points right here for I needed that confirmation bad right at that moment. I didn't know if anybody knew what I was talking about. It sounds like at least one person does, that Luna knows. Yeah. I mean, and I'm glad, and if anybody else wants to chime in on this, here's the thing. If you've ever had that moment, even if it's a moment, if you've ever had, and even if you think it's because even if you privately thinking it's because you're crazy, because at that moment you were drunk or or you were sick or you were fantasizing, I don't know. But even if you suddenly came to oh God, I thought I was not moving, but I am. Or, oh God, I didn't think the plane was there, but it is. Or, oh God, oh God, I thought I could just stand up and go to the bathroom on this plane. And then all of a sudden there was turbulence. And suddenly it occurred to me Jesus, I'm 500 miles above the ground and I'm 5,000 miles per hour sailing through space. I had totally forgotten that for a minute. For a minute, I was just going to complain about how bad the movie was as though I was in a hotel room, totally forgetting that actually I should be fearing for my own life first. If you've ever had those moments at all, even if they only lasted a moment, right? What we're here to do as physicists is say, whoa, okay, maybe you were crazy. Maybe it was your craziness. But first of all, how did you work your way out of the moment? How did you decide, oh, the plane is moving? Let's stop and talk about that for a second is the idea here. Because in fact, we better know how it is that we ground our notion of motion. We better actually be clear what evidence we do use or don't use in order to establish who is actually moving when, right? That's what I'm sort of trying to say. But then also, okay. But then also, as I think I mentioned right at the end of last time, even if all of that seems very hypothetical or very theoretical to you guys, even if it's okay, fine. The definition of velocity is slippery, but can you just give us some equations and can we move on with our lives? Which would be a fair instinct if any of you are thinking. But let me also remind you, it goes more concrete than even just this. What I want to remind you of, I started saying this last time, is the freaking Earth. The ground. Let's talk about that for a second. And I mean for real, because this is actually this is the nub of the gist of the center of the physics. This is the physics of physics, is that we are all right now sitting or lying or whatever in our apartments, right? We're all in our private Idahos, but our feet are on the ground some way or another, or at least the feet of our chairs are on the ground some way, or on a floor, which is on the ground, right? And right now, whatever anybody's thinking of the material, hopefully what you're not thinking right now is, oh my God, I feel so dizzy. And so whoa, hopefully nobody right now is fearing for their safety. Hopefully nobody now is thinking whoa, I would kind of be okay with this class if I weren't hurtling through space so quickly while Yaverbaum tried to teach. No one's thinking that. We're all thinking, I think, we're all feeling as stable physically as it gets. Our feet are on the ground. Our desk is not moving away from our chest or whatever. My pencil's not flying out of my hands. I'm not dizzy. I'm not nauseated, yada, yada, yada. Yet, as of about third grade, at least in my life, as of about the age of 8 on, for me, if anybody at any time, especially in school, if anybody ever asked me, is the Earth moving? I'd say yes, because that's totally what I was taught, right? I was totally taught that in third grade or somewhere. In fact, I absolutely remember, and I hope some of you guys maybe do, because I want to make a big deal of this. There is a moment in my life where I went into the refrigerator with my dad, and got out fruits from the refrigerator, like an orange and a grapefruit and a freaking watermelon. And my dad was he'd like been waiting for this moment that he like put the watermelon down and he had the orange or whatever, the grapefruit going around the watermelon. And he's like, the watermelon's the sun and here's the earth going around the watermelon. And then he put this other little fruit, whatever the other thing was, a grape or something, and had that going around the earth like the moon. And then wouldn't you know it, like he'd been waiting, like it was like as exciting to him to show me the solar system model as it was for my mom to show me the book How Babies Are Made. And I'm not trying to stereotype, it's just true. That's what happened in my family. And then sure enough, my dad wasn't crazy, because next thing I know, I have to make a model for third grade. Like I have to actually like string these things together or with ping pong balls or whatever, and show how I know that the earth does not sit still. The earth goes round and round the sun, like we all learned in third grade. And not only did we learn that the earth goes round and round all the time and spins as well, right? But it's like going through space all the time, while all the time it's spinning. Now, this is what I'm learning. And I think you guys learned in third grade, that the earth moves around the sun. More than that, I learned, and I think you guys learned, that not only did we learn, oh, the earth goes around the sun, but we even also learned, maybe a little bit later than third grade, we learned like people didn't always think that. People used to be ignorant or religious or something. And then thank goodness for the hero we learned about Galileo. You might have learned about Copernicus or Kepler or Newton or something, but like I do remember hearing about the hero Galileo, who was brave enough and like visionary enough to not accept this ignorant, oppressive view that had been like held for literally thousands of years by pretty much everybody in charge, that Galileo rejected the cruel, irrational dogma of the church. This is how I learned it. I'm not, by the way, I am not saying that the church is any of those things. We're just saying this is how I learned it. That Galileo was a hero because even though the big bad church and the big bad world and all the big bad philosophers of 2000 years, like Aristotle, who's like a genius in every respect, that all these big bad ignorant people had said that the earth sits still. And the church kept saying that the earth sat still. But Galileo was a hero and kind of like the father of classical scientific method, because Galileo trusted not only the evidence of his own senses, but the faculty of his own reasoning, and was courageous enough to start advancing this view against dogma and against authority, to start advancing this view that in fact the earth moved. And we all learned that like he was heroic and that was the actual correct scientific view. And now here we are in 20th century science, like for me, like here we are in 1976, or here we are in 2021. And thank goodness we have the benefits of modern science and the modern scientific method and modern courageous thinking, where we now all understand that scientifically the earth moves. And I'm here to tell you this is worth talking about, because because that's what I learned, that the earth moves and it goes around the sun. And I learned that it was heroic of someone to be able to come forth with that view, despite what all of dogma was saying to him. And I want to tell you, that's all fascinating. And I'm not saying that it's false, but I'm saying something about that entire story. Well, wait, first, actually, I want to pause. Oh, wait, let me pause for a second. I'm about to obviously say something that I think is wrong with that whole story, but I don't want to confuse people. Let me just pause for a second. Can anybody give me any kind of thumbs up or like yes or anything if even the story I'm telling is vaguely familiar? Like, are you vaguely familiar with the basic concept of like we used to think the earth didn't move and now we do think the earth moved? Okay, that's a yeah. Thank you, Kathy.
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome. Wow, it's so fast. I love it. Yes, thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Jean-Pierre. Thank you, Amarani. Thank you, Dorina. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Melissa. Awesome. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. All right. And Noelle, and you can see I'm getting a little, I have to be careful. I get very fired up over this. This is kind of like where we get into my life's work in a weird way, and like my dissertations and stuff. But like that's the story, or in a way that I learned. Obviously, there's like retro fitting, but here's my problem with that story. Okay, I've got a lot of problems with that story. Not that it didn't happen, but I don't think it happened that way. Number one, let's just get this straight. Right. Well, number one, it is true that for thousands and thousands of years, anybody in authority, almost anybody who was careful enough to take careful observations and document anything and write anything down, whether it was data or a theory or anything, it is true that in terms of any written records from almost any civilization on this planet, Mesopotamian, Chinese, Egyptian, Babylonian, like whatever civilization you pick, go back as far as you want. It is certainly true that the way the universe was understood and pictured by people was an Earth at the center and a bunch of stuff going around it. I mean, that is true across civilizations. There are exceptions, but they're very notable exceptions, like they're very exceptional exceptions. It is absolutely true, as far as anything I know, that the way civilizations like understood the structure of the universe, and I'm talking the advanced scholars of every civilization, like the advanced people that wrote stuff down, which is advanced, and who took careful observations, which they did do, blah, blah. Yes, they all had the Earth at the center and a bunch of stuff like sun, moon, stars going around it. That is true. And it's true that that view changed in the mid 1600s with Galileo. But two things about that, or maybe three, actually. Okay, wait, sorry, I'm getting a little crazy here. Hold on a second. Yeah, just sorry. Before I'm going to continue to get a little crazy with this, but to try to keep things in focus here or keep them like educational, I'm here saying that the train of thought sheet is an analogy to, or a model of, or like a representation of the question of the Earth's motion. Like the train represents Earth. And the situation of us being, and I know I said this, but again, just to sort of be clear, like the situation of us sitting on the train and like collecting our, looking around and seeing no bumps, or feeling no bumps and seeing no signs of activity, like, and then I was wondering, I wonder if this train is moving or not. Right. That's supposed to be analogous to a bunch of people, scholars, astronomers, invested people, or priests, or just normal people on the street, but people throughout the history of the world wondering whether the ground that they were standing on is actually moving or not. Now, and that question is often called the question of heliocentricity versus geocentricity, like the model of the world that has the Earth at the center. That's called the geocentric model, geo, Earth, center, center. So the geocentric model is the one that everybody used for thousands of years, everybody, until about the 1500s. That's the geocentric model. It is true that through a variety of circumstances, and not only just one person, but a number of people and some advanced equipment like telescopes, okay, it is true. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, just before I go back on the whole rant, I mean, this is a rant of mine. Obviously, I have some strong emotional feelings about all this, but before I get too ranty again, just to try to keep these things to the facts. Facts are like that story that I just ranted about, like has some truth. It is really, really true that for 2,000 years we embraced, and when I say we, I mean anybody who thought about it at all and did anything and looked at documents or made documents. Yes, we embraced a view that had the Earth at the center of the world and the moon going around it, and then Mercury and Venus going around that, and then the sun going around that, and then Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn going around that, and then all the rest of the stars going around that. Like that was the view for 2,000 years. Then some things happen, which I may or may not get into, but some things happen, and you have look at this guy Copernicus who does this mathy thing that's sort of interesting. And then Galileo comes along, and he's already influenced by the math of Copernicus and the math of this other Greek guy named Aristarchus. And then Galileo, who is a free thinker in many ways, but also a total churchgoer, I might add, and a total and totally sponsored by the church. Galileo, what he adds to this whole discussion or to this whole issue is he does add a telescope that he makes himself and that very few other people in the world have at that point. Like kind of a side note here, but just so you understand, like the telescope was not invented by Galileo, but it was invented at the time of Galileo, and Galileo adopted it fast. Like quick story, I get like, well, I don't have, there were lenses in the Middle Ages. Lenses were understood enough that certain people in the Middle Ages had glasses. I find this, I just, again, forgive me, but like, just so you have some perspective on this, like the idea of grinding and carefully shaping some kind of transparent material, like glass or, what we use today, plastic, so as to help clarify or magnify images. That enough of optics was known in the 1400s and 1500s, largely developed by Islamic empires. Like this is a great one of the many huge mathematical and physics contributions of Muslim empires in the 13 and 1400s. There were glasses. What I'm trying to say is there were glasses in the world, not a lot. And you had to be a person of means or in the clergy or something to have them, but there were glasses. But what glasses are, and monocles, but what like a magnifying glass or a pair of glasses is a lens that's helping my eye, right? Galileo was this guy that lived, Galileo lived from 1582 to 1642. Galileo met this guy from Holland, this Dutch guy, who had come up with this idea of, he had realized that whatever's happening between the eye and a lens, when you put a lens in front of an eye and the lens helps the eye see better, whatever that process is, this Dutch guy, whose name I don't even remember, this Dutch guy realized, wait, if somehow we could put a lens in front of an eye so that the lens helps the eye, but then if somehow we could put another lens in front of the first lens, or maybe even put it the other way around, if we could put a lens in front of a lens to help that lens, and then the lens helps the eye, maybe if we do this really carefully, if we put the two lenses perfectly at the right places and we grind them down perfect, like really precisely, maybe this could be one of those situations where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like maybe with one lens helping another lens help the eye, we'll get more than a doubled effect, so to speak. Maybe we'll get an amplified effect, like where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This is technically called constructive interference in physics. I mean, it comes up like sometimes, you put two things, like if I can grade a paper an hour and Joe Walters can grade a paper an hour, then sometimes you think you put both me and Joe in a room together. Okay, we're going to grade 2 papers an hour, right? Like sometimes life works that way. But other times it's the whole is different from the sum of its parts. Like sometimes Joe Walters, I mean, the other physics, if sometimes it's like if I grade a paper in an hour and Joe can grade a paper in an hour, but if you put us both in the same room, we can share some tricks with each other or interact with each other in some way that helps each other. Then suddenly we could grade faster, maybe. Or like we make an assembly line out of it or something. Or maybe you put Joe and me in a room together, and even though I can grade a paper an hour and he can grade a paper an hour, we put us in a room and then we blather and we play video games and chess or something. So suddenly now together we only grade a paper. Suddenly now it takes us 3 hours to grade 2 papers, right? That can happen. Sometimes the sum is the whole of its parts, and when it is, it's called. Okay, I'm going to write this just so that this is physics, right? Because I know it seems like I'm all over the place here, but just. Both of these terms are going to come up a lot in this class and the next class. So it's things come when they come, but this term. Okay, so slight size, bit of vocabulary here, which again is going to come up in this superposition is going to come up a lot when we're talking about Newton's laws and forces, which is fairly soon. Interference is going to come up a lot when we talk about waves, which is more physics 204. But here's the dichotomy between the two words. Like here's how they function in physics. And I think this is a fantastic, and we would definitely, I wasn't actually intending to do all of this right now, but this was going to have to happen at some point anyway in this course. So here it is. Like this is an important distinction. Like sometimes the whole is equal to the sum of its parts, sometimes not. The reason that sometimes the whole can like not be equal to the sum of its parts, like it sounds like a weird idea, but it's when the parts interact with each other. We sometimes call that interaction, but we generally, when it leads to this result, we call it interference. You might know from other science classes or like 7th graders, and you might remember that interference can be constructive or destructive. Like it's a funny word that way. It's not, it's interfering in the specific sense that I'm talking about. It's when two parts, like, so it's when, so interference means when you take a bunch of ingredients that you're going to put together, like to make something, but that somehow the presence of one ingredient affects the contribution of another ingredient. That's called interference. Like when Joe and I are going to act differently in a room because we're both there. Suddenly our contribution is different from what it would have been if we had been in isolation. So sometimes there's superposition, sometimes there's interference. The effect that when interference is constructive, when it's like a good, then that yields what we generally call in life to be amplification. An amplifying effect, like what a stereo, what a speaker, what an amp does for sound, and then like send it to a speaker, when it boosts a signal. The whole this is what a long way of saying. I'm saying this. Okay, again, this is all kind of like a little bit of just like a side road through history or whatever. Just happens to be things I really care about, but this is like the birth of physics here for real in a very important way. Like I'm really kind of trying to say that what physics, well, this is the birth of physics, and it partly involves the discovery of the telescope. I say the discovery, I mean, it's not like anybody like walked and found a telescope in the grass, but what happened was this Dutch guy, there were already lenses. There was already enough known about lenses, particularly from the Islamic empires, that this Dutch guy by the early 1600s was like, oh, and he was very technical. He wasn't like, I don't even remember his name, and we never hear of his name because he wasn't like some big flowery genius or some theoretical dude. He was actually really technically quite proficient. He was able to grind lenses well enough and courageously enough, diligently enough, that then he could put two lenses together in a tube and then look through that tube. And now all of a sudden the effect was like way more than just two lenses like on a pair of glasses. It was like lens to eye, boom. Suddenly this Dutch dude with this new telescope device, he could see things across a crowded room a lot more closely and sharply than anybody ever had before. And one of the reasons that nobody remembers, well, one of the reasons that I don't remember the name of this guy that invented this telescope that showed it to Galileo randomly is that that's as far as this guy got with his telescope. What this guy was doing with his telescope and where Galileo heard about it, and this is what I'm not making this up, but evidently the most creative or fun or exciting or public use that the telescope dude came up with for his own telescope was going to fancy 16th century parties, standing at one end of the room, looking through his weird device and seeing women on the other side of the room in whatever outfits they were wearing, and like showing his men buddies, isn't this great? Like it was like a total party device. From everything I've read, it was like a novelty, like device. Isn't this clever? Aren't we getting away with something device? Now, great, but it wasn't Galileo's invention. But Galileo's like, oh, I think you're onto something with this. So this becomes like this, like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates kind of weird thing where Galileo didn't invent it, but he adopted it. He went home and he taught himself how to grind lenses, which is, by the way, unbelievable, like really hard, and had nothing to do with the trade. He was supposed to be a doctor. He was going to be a medical doctor. And then he trained himself to grind lenses, which is like a highly developed craft. And he does it so precisely that he makes his own telescope. He doesn't claim to have invented it or anything, but he makes one. But now there's only like a few guys in the world that have one. And one of them is like sitting there, like doing, like basically trying to sell it as like it's pornography or something. And again, I'm not trying to be offensive. Like this is my understanding of what the other guy was doing. But then Galileo, who also, by the way, was also a major drinker and a major partier and hugely fat, like Galileo was, and had issues with women and had illegitimate children, and that's a whole other story. But Galileo was a churchgoer, but was not the most upstanding dude in the book. He made his own telescope. Now there's a couple of them flying around, but so he's an early adopter, makes his telescope and turns it to the skies and starts looking at the skies the heavens, through his telescope carefully enough that not only does he point it to the same place in the sky, like night after night after night, and take careful observations of the sky, but starts drawing very carefully what he's seeing in the sky. And again, this guy was not meant to be an artist. He wasn't trying to be a painter or anything or make a career in drawing any more than he was trying to be a lens grinder. He wasn't even trying to be a physicist at first. He actually wanted to be a doctor. But the point is, he just decided to do this because he got curious or whatever, driven or ambitious or wanted money or stuff. So he starts drawing what he sees in the sky night after night and taking careful records and drawing the changes and puts out this book in 1610. I know I'm getting anyway, he puts out this book in 1610 called Sidereus Nuncius, which means Starry Messenger. And I'm just trying to think if it was Latin or Italian. I think this book was, he didn't write it in English. This book, I'm 99% sure it came out in Italian. It might have come out in Latin, but I think it came out in Italian. But it's called Starry Messenger, and mostly what it is is his drawings of what he's seeing in the sky through his telescope, drawings of the moon, drawings of the sun, which blinded him eventually, drawings of Jupiter. We'll get into that, drawings of Venus and stars that people knew. And he's just drawing this crap night after night that he's seen, but drawing stuff that he sees with a telescope. Okay, just to try to put this in perspective too. So again, I know I'm talking more than I should, and I know this is a bit of history, but and we're not going to do, of course, not every class is like the history of physics, but this is, in my mind, pretty important history or pretty important perspective. So just bear with me for a couple more minutes. So Galileo makes this telescope, makes it on his own, doesn't invent it, but makes it. And it's one of the few ones in the world. And then he's turning it to the sky and he's watching the sky night after night and drawing. So he's doing this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then he quickly takes and on purpose, he takes all the sketches and everything and writes out some observations and things that he thinks these sketches mean. And he slams it together into a book and gets the book out fast on purpose. I mean, this is kind of like modern times. I mean, this is like what a lot of my colleagues live all the time, this like rush to publish thing. Like it does become an intense, weird part of science where once you think you know something, you kind of want to be the first one to say it or blah, blah, blah. And you need to get funded to say it and blah, blah, and all that. And Galileo went through a lot of funding issues, but he throws out this book in 1610. It's basically a bunch of his personal sketches of what he's seeing in the sky with this newfangled weirdo device that not only do very few people have or even know about, but let alone almost no one. I mean, he rushes to get this book out because he knows if he gets this book out first, he's the first person ever to do this. And what's this that he's doing? Here's kind of part of my big point is this dude is looking at the sky through a device that magnifies things approximately 4 to 10 times. I say approximate because his device improved over time, and it varied. But the most it ever magnified was about 10 times, and the least it ever magnified was about 4 times. It was usually in that range, 4 to 10 times magnification. So anything looked at looks like 4 to 10 times bigger than normal. Now, on the one hand, that is not huge at all by today's standards. Like today, you can go to like not a bodega, but like you can go to a kid's shop and get like a kid's binoculars, like a cheapo knockoff plastic binoculars for like $30. And typically they won't go any lower than that. Like they'll be like 4 to 10 times magnification, like a $30 thing of binoculars that you can just buy now. But that's now, right? And so you can imagine like the Hubble telescope and stuff is like preposterous magnifications. But this is the first telescope that's ever been used for this purpose, the one that Galileo's using. So it's worth to me to stop and have perspective on this for a minute. You got to picture yourself standing at your window, maybe with a huge amount of beer in your gut, because that was typical or a huge amount of wine in your gut, and a huge gut, if that helps you picture this more, right? In other words, picture a human being. Don't picture some crazy perfect scientist that you can't even relate to because they walk on water and everything they do is unrelatable. No, like picture someone who like likes to party, likes to eat, gets in trouble with women, gets in trouble with the church. He's not a perfect person, right? But he's standing at his window at night, looking at the sky and knowing that whatever he's seeing in the sky, he is closer to it by about 10 times than anybody in the history of humanity has ever been. Like, this is one of those weird moments in science that is not usually the way science is. Like, we love to tell, like, in other words, I love the story of Galileo. I haven't even gotten yet to why I don't like the way it was told to me when I was young. I haven't even shown you yet what's wrong with that. But the reason I care so much is Galileo is one of my heroes, and I have written books about this and stuff, and I'll give them to you and stuff. Like, Galileo is the man, but I think for reasons that are much more subtle than the story that I was ever given. Galileo is one of those few scientists who actually gets to have that weird moment where he really does know while it's happening that something crazy is happening, because he's looking at the sky from a vantage point that is 10 times closer, not only closer than anybody around him, which is already kind of unique, but by definition he has to know. When I say he's 10 times closer to the sky, let's be clear. What I mean is, when he started pointing his telescope to the sky, because he's now 10 times closer to the sky than anyone was before, like, he's like put himself on a ladder that's so tall that it's brought him 10 times closer to the heavens, right? To the point where, like, literally, of course, I don't know if this is obvious to you or not, but when I say 10 times closer to the sky, what I mean is, now when he points his telescope to the sky, there's all these places that are dark, like just dark patches in the sky. And then he puts his telescope and suddenly stars pop into view, stars that were so dim that you couldn't see them without the telescope, but now you can see them because you're 10 times closer. In other words, he had to know while he was looking at the sky that he was seeing shit that existed and that had existed for thousands and thousands of years, but no one had ever seen. Like, that is a big deal in science. That's what we like to think science is all the time. It almost never feels that way. And he knew it, because that's why he rushed. He was smart enough, like, oh my God, I got to document this. I got to start drawing this. I got to see what's going on. I'm seeing stars that no one's ever seen. Like, I'm discovering stuff. I mean, it's crazy. And again, it's even crazy today when you get a bigger telescope and you can do like a bigger telescope than the person before you, and you can discover something that wasn't seen a year ago. That's a big deal. But this is the first time it's ever happened. It's like a category jump. And so he sees a lot of things through this telescope, none of which, so he sees things in the telescope that, sorry, I'm really getting it, that are kind of like the white light. Like, okay, wait, let me back up. Like, in your train thing, you know, you're going through, am I moving? Am I not? Am I moving? Am I not? Oh God, I'm really running out of time. I know. I'm looking at the time, but in your train thing, am I moving? Am I not? Am I moving? Am I not? Then at some point, and you answer, and your answers are valid. And I still want to talk about your specific answers, but then I throw in the white lights, and then you answer again. And on some of yours, I commented like, oh, so did the white lights change your view or not? Or in you guys, I asked the last class, like, who changed their opinion in any way because of the white lights? Well, again, I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but just to get to it before 12:05, like, the white lights represent stars. Okay. I mean, I don't know if that's obvious or not, but like, people were standing on the earth for a long time, but people see the stars. And if you look at the stars, you may or may not know, like, if you watch the stars at night, they move across the sky. Like, if you just, like, I think everybody knows the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Stars all do the same thing. It's just less obvious because it's at night and you have to be standing there at night to see, but stars rise and set, and they all do it together. There's a huge canopy of stars that almost all of them all move together as one thing, just like the white lights in the subway. So for some of us, when we see those stars moving, or just like when you see the sun moving, some of us might say, oh, like, I mean, the most obvious thing to think is, oh, they're moving past me. Now, some of us might be sophisticated enough to say, well, it looks like they're moving past me, but maybe I'm moving past them. Like, for some people, just the motion of the stars might give you, just like for some of you, seeing the white lights changed your opinion. I'm not saying it should or shouldn't have, but for some of us, the white lights were information that started indicating, oh, maybe we actually are moving. And for some people, way before Galileo, that was a little bit of a thing, but not much, because they all moved together, the stars. So it's easier to conclude, well, it's I don't know why would, I mean, 1,000 or 1,500 like points of light all be stuck together, moving together all the time. Some people might conclude maybe I'm moving past them. but we don't feel it at all. So it takes a little bit more than that, a little bit more. Any of you said, I don't have enough information. The truth is the white lights add something, but they don't seal the deal. And they didn't for Galileo, and they didn't for anybody before Galileo. But then with the telescope, he started seeing other things besides the white lights, started seeing planets and things like that. Well, I'll get into that next time with you. But he started seeing more and more information that indicated the possibility that Earth was moving, the possibility. But here's now, before I say anything more about what he actually did, before I get to, I want to go back to why I was ranting before. Here's the thing, like so far, everything I'm saying just sounds like more details on the story that you've all heard. But before we run out of time, I got to make clear, even, and believe me, don't worry about homework 5. Like, just, obviously, I'll have to catch myself up on Monday. But what I'm trying to say is, even if Galileo did all that, and even if he used his telescope and started seeing some really interesting things that started indicating to him that maybe Copernicus and these others who had theorized about a hypothetical situation where it might be easier to make predictions if you pictured the Earth as moving. And no one was really saying that it really was, but they're saying, you know, sometimes it's easier to predict things if the Earth is moving. If we call the Earth a moving object and we put the sun in the center, it's like easier to organize our understanding. So Galileo started thinking like there's something to that. And he started looking through his telescope and seeing things that indicated more and more that there was something to that, that there was something effective about looking at the Earth as moving rather than as still. Still didn't prove that it was. It didn't prove that it was, but it indicated that it might be useful or reasonable to view the Earth as moving. So what Galileo then had to wrestle with is, and this is the thing of train of thought, and this is the thing, I know I didn't finish what I want to say exactly, but we will on Wednesday, next week. What Galileo had to do is what you guys had to do in train of thought. Even though his telescope was telling him something's going on here, all his telescope could give him is more evidence of what was happening in the sky. The telescope doesn't tell you what's going on the ground. Right? So no matter how much evidence he's getting in the sky of things moving around in the sky in weird ways that might indicate something, still, just like when you're on an airplane, if you're on an airplane and you look up and you're like, wait, am I moving or not? And you look out the window and you see a cloud go by the airplane, you could say to yourself, oh, there's a cloud in motion, therefore I must be in motion. But you can just as easily like, and that would be like, I think like Ashley might say that, but then Molly might, and I don't know which side people were on, but then Molly might say, but wait. Yeah, it looked like that cloud just zoomed by the airplane. But how do you know? You don't know whether the airplane just moved forward past the cloud or whether the cloud moved backward past the airplane. If you want to actually know what's going on with the airplane, you got to do better than just look at that cloud, because the cloud only tells you what the airplane's doing compared to it. If you actually want to know what the airplane's actually doing, what are you going to do? Or what are you going to do on train of thought? And Galileo had to say, oh, sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you. No, I totally agree. Yes, I'm about to stop. You're totally right. Thank you. And we will just literally stop when I stop. But Galileo is seeing these really cool things in this telescope that are astounding. But then he wants to say to the world, you know, the Earth might be moving. And by the way, world, if you believe me that the Earth might be moving, just by the way, and then the world was like, the Earth might be moving. I mean, dude, look at your feet. Look at the ground. Is the ground moving, you crazy person? Like when you jump up, does a tree slam you in the ass, you crazy person? Like, what do you mean the Earth is moving? And here's where I'm going to stop. I want you guys to know that Galileo did not say, well, it's moving so slowly that you can't notice it. That's not the deal. If the Earth is moving, according to the calculations that we say today, then the Earth is moving at 65,000 miles an hour. Like, this is where I want you to understand that, and this is my rant ultimately, that I do love Galileo and I love where we're going to go with this, but you need to understand that all the people that were saying that the Earth wasn't moving were not crazy. And if Galileo wants to tell us that the Earth is moving, he has to do better than say, trust the evidence of your senses and the rationality of your brain, because nothing in the evidence of my senses ever tells me that the Earth is moving. This is where I want to, I just want to make this clear. The problem with the whole solar system story, the problem with like making solar systems out of fruit when you're in 3rd grade and stuff, is that's about the moment that most of us start hating science without realizing it. Because 3rd grade, and I know the time is, I'm sorry about this, we will end in like 1 second, I promise. But just here's the thing. about the moment that people say to us, according to science, the earth is moving, that's about the moment where the back of our brain knows that something's wrong. Because these are the people that were telling us 2 minutes ago that science is about our evidence of our senses and playing with Plato and like looking, feeling, smelling, and thinking. And there's nothing in our senses and nothing in thinking about our senses that should indicate at all. Why would I possibly think that the earth is moving at 65,000 miles an hour? It's not actually logical for me to think that as a third grader. The only way for me as a third grader to accept that the earth is moving all the time past the sun is to decide, oh, science is about like black magic and weirdness and memorization. And I guess Galileo was a hero because he came up with something new that I'm supposed to memorize. So Galileo just becomes our new church. Like we just accept that earth is moving now because our teachers tell us. But if we really want to do science, we really need to understand why it's at all logical or at all supported by our senses to possibly walk around every day believing that the ground below us is moving at 65,000 miles an hour all the time, which, yes, I do believe it is. But the reason I believe that is something called Galileo's principle of relativity. And that's what we will establish on Monday. I'm sorry this took so long, but that's my point. I mean, if it means anything, and unfortunately, I know we all have to go. So so let's just go. Like, I'm just going to say goodbye. I'm sorry. Goodbye. If you're good, I'll answer questions on Monday. Sorry. Or you can like email me or whatever, but sorry. Let's see the chat. Bye. Yes. Bye. Sorry. Yes. Bye. 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 Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Professor.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. You guys good? Great job. Thank you. Sorry. Bye, Catherine. Bye. Bye, Jennifer. Great. Bye, Sonia. Thank you. Okay. You guys good? Luna?